Hi, hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Maddie. I love to read books, and that's about it. But I'm so excited to be here today because I have my fall book recommendation list. I have almost 30 books on this list, and they're all from a variety of genres. But to kick off this video with probably my favorite genre at this time, and a genre that I think is just perfect for fall, is fantasy. In particular, we're going to start off with YA fantasy, which is another one of my favorite genres. The first book on this list is probably one of my favorite universes by one of my favorite authors of all time, and it should be no surprise, it's Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I have the special edition of this book, so it's pretty cool. But if you didn't already know, Caraval is a completed YA fantasy trilogy. The first book in particular follows the main character Scarlet, and Scarlet is participating in this competitive game called Caraval, hence the title of the book. And for the game, her sister Tella is kidnapped by the mastermind of the game, Legend, and the winner of the game is whoever finds Tella first. But I love this book and the series. It's so magical and whimsical and descriptive, and also has a romance, so really it has all of my favorite elements in a book. It's such a fun book and a fun series. The next book on this list is Legendborn, or the Legendborn series by Tracy Deonn. To note, as on the date that I'm filming this video, this series is incomplete, but I feel like this shouldn't deter you from picking up these books. It's such a wonderful series. The Legendborn follows the main character Bree, and Bree joins this early college program where literally her first night there, she witnesses a demon attack near campus. And as a result, she finds out there's actually this secret society on the campus that's based on King Arthur's Round Table. But I feel like the description I just gave you doesn't really do the book justice. It's so much more than that. It's truly such a unique world and setting, and it's so intricate, it's exciting, it's emotional, it's realistic, and randomly it has one of the better love triangles that I have ever read. The next book on this list is another series, but it's the Belladonna series, the first book being Belladonna. The first book follows the main character Signa, and for all of her life she has been surrounded by death. And when another one of her guardians randomly passes away, she is sent to live with some extended family that she has never met before. And upon arrival to her extended family's estate, she figures out that the matriarch of that family had mysteriously passed away as well. So in order to solve the mystery before any more death occurs, she makes a deal with death itself. It has gothic elements, it has a murder mystery plotline, it has romance, it's exciting, it makes you want to keep on reading the book. I love the descriptions of the setting and the characters. Truly, what more could you ask for in a book? Next book I actually read last month and I really enjoyed it, but it's A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. It's a YA standalone, so you don't have to worry about jumping into a series if you're not ready for that. But this book follows the main character Effie. Effie is a student at a university, and she enters this competition to redesign her favorite author's estate. And when she arrives at the estate, she finds out that there's another student from her university who is also there. However, this student is trying to prove that her favorite author is a fraud. I don't want to get into any more details because I feel like it's more exciting to figure out what is happening as you were reading the book. But I love this book. It was so unique and so descriptive and so atmospheric. It was eerie, and you can tell by reading this book that Ava Reid truly loves storytelling, and that part really shines in this book. There is a romance in this book, but I would say it's more of a subplot as it really follows Effie and her development as a character. Also, it has dark academia vibes if you're into that. The next book is probably one of my favorite books that I read this year, but it's Where the Dark Stands Still. This is another standalone, so perfect if you don't want to get into a series. This book begins with, I believe you pronounce her name Liskia, but I might be pronouncing that wrong. But anyways, the story starts with her running away from her village, and she runs away to a spirit wood where she is caught by a demon who is the warden of those woods. And the demon offers her a bargain Essentially, in exchange for a year of servitude, he will grant her a wish. This book is inspired by Howl's Moving Castle, which is one of my favorite franchises of all time. It has a sentient manor, a dark and magical forest. Truly a unique story that is based on Polish folklore as well. I love this book so much. Please pick it up. The next book is another standalone, but it's The Night Circus. This book is about a circus that appears out of nowhere, and it only appears at night. The circus is truly a magical and enchanting for all the circus goers, but behind the scenes of the circus, there is a competition that is happening between two dueling magicians. There is a romance in this book, but it is definitely subdued. It's a subplot. I would say the real highlight of this book is just the overall vibes. There's not really a strong plot line, but just the description of the world and the setting are so beautiful and magical to read about. So that concludes all my YA fantasy book recommendations. Now let's get into the non-YA, more adult fantasy recommendations. The first book in this section is One for My Enemy by Olive E. Blake. This is a Romeo and Juliet inspired retelling. It's also a standalone. It's an urban fantasy. So if you're not really into intricate worlds about creatures or magical beings, this would be perfect because it's set in New York during a modern day time. But because it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling, it follows two rivaling witch families, and it's a fun spin on Romeo and Juliet. This book in particular has such beautiful writing, such beautiful prose, and fair warning, this book will destroy you, so get ready. The next book is probably one of my favorite books of all time, but it's The Invisible Life by Addie LaRue. This is a standalone, it's historic fiction fantasy, follows the main character Addie, and in order to not get married, she makes a deal to live forever, but the consequences is that she will never be remembered ever again. However, years and years down the line, she meets a man who remembers her for the first time. But this book is such a beautiful novel, another one that has such beautiful writing, beautiful prose, beautiful themes. I love the storyline. I love Addie as a character. I love her development. I love following her throughout time. You will feel all the emotions while reading this book, and the ending will definitely get to you. The next book is a duology, but it's One Dark Window. This is a gothic fantasy. It follows the main character Elspeth, and she's in a Mistlock village who has a monster stuck inside her head. The story really starts when she meets a mysterious highwayman and is thrown into this adventure-like quest in order to save her village from the dark magic that is infecting it. But this is a refreshing fantasy duology. It has a really unique magic system that's card-based, and it also has consequences, which I feel like is kind of rare in more recently published fantasy books and series. It's also atmospheric, it's gothic, it's dark, it has romance. Once again, I love that vibe. One of my favorite books and duologies ever. Next category, and a complete genre shift, but it's romance. The first one being The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is a great book to transition into your fall reads. It's one of my favorite books that I read in 2024 as well. It has magical realism, it has romance of course, but this book follows Clementine after the death of her beloved aunt. And growing up, she has always heard stories from her aunt about her aunt's apartment and just how magical it is, and she doesn't really necessarily believe her aunt until she moves into that apartment after her aunt's death. And one day, when Clementine enters the apartment, she actually enters 7 years into the past, and there's a stranger man there. This book, it deals with grief, it deals with adulthood, it explores the idea of the right person but at the wrong time. I truly love this book. It was so good. The next book is a little bit more fun, a little bit more spooky, but still has themes of grief in it. It's The Dead Romantics, also by Ashley Poston. This follows the main character Florence, and she's a ghostwriter, meaning she writes books under the author's name. And Florence is writing a book that she's stuck on, and she's denied from her request of an extension by the new editor. After the news of the denial, she also receives a phone call about the unexpected passing of her father, which results in her returning to her hometown after a decade of never visiting. And when she arrives at her family's home, which is also a funeral parlor, she discovers a ghost, and it's just not any random ghost, but it's the ghost of her new editor. But like I said, it's fun, it's a little spooky, it's perfect for fall, it has romance, it has discussions of grief, so there is some seriousness to this novel as well, but I feel like Ashley Poston balances fun and seriousness really well. The next category is paranormal, and I separated this category out because it's a fall book recommendation list, so why not? So let's jump in. The first book on this list is just a fun book, okay? Don't hate me for it, but it's Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Listen, I love Ali Hazelwood. I think she writes such fun books. No, they're not groundbreaking. No, they're not literary masterpieces, but they're so much fun, and I always enjoy reading her books. But this book in particular is a vampire werewolf paranormal book, and it's very Wattpad coded, which once again, not gonna be for everyone, but it's very nostalgic in that way. Don't read this book for the plot, because it's strangely convoluted and a little bit messy. Just read it for the characters and the romance, because it's much more entertaining that way. This follows Misery, who's a vampire, and her father is the vampire, and she's called in to uphold a peaceful alliance with the werewolves. And what is this peaceful alliance? It's a marriage. And it's a marriage with the alpha werewolf Low. But like I said, such a fun book. Read it for the romance. Have a fun time. That's all I have to say. The next book is a little bit of a shift from Bride, but it's Serpents and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This is an incomplete series. This book also has vampires, but a little bit more serious. It follows Aurea, and she's a human living in a vampire world. And as a young child, she is taken in by Vincent, who is the king vampire in the House of Night. And because Aurea feels like she doesn't truly belong in the vampire world and with vampires, she enters this competition where the winner of the competition is granted a wish by a goddess. But I love this book and the series overall, or what has been published so far. It's fun, it's exciting, it has trials, it has competitions, it has stakes. And stakes as in trial stakes, and not like stakes killing vampire stakes. It also has a romance, which is nice, of course. And the ending of the first book is crazy. I couldn't believe everything that happened in it. The next book, or the next series, is The Raven Boys, part of the Raven Cycle series. This is a completed series as well. Truly such a unique book and series. I loved every second of it. The first book in particular follows the main character Blue. She comes from a family of psychics, and all her life she has been told that if she kisses the boy she truly loves, he will die. Yes, it's a little dramatic, but it's also YA, so it's all fun and games. But stick with me here, because this book is like a quest adventure to find the sleeping Welsh king. There's found family, there's humor, there's well-developed and realistic characters. Every character in this book felt so distinct from each other. It was so amazing. Cannot recommend this book enough. The last book is called The Ex-Hex. Like the title mentions, Vivian performs a hex on her ex. You know, just a fun, silly, girly activity. And she didn't even think that the hex worked until years and years later, her ex comes back into town and things go awry. But like I said, this book is fun, it's silly, it's spooky, it deals with witches and hexes. It's not going to be anything groundbreaking, but I had such a fun time reading this book, especially reading it in October. The next category is YA mystery thrillers, starting off with, I think, an underrated book and series, but it's None Shall Sleep. I think it's incomplete. There might be a third book. Don't quote me on that. But this book follows Emma, and Emma's a survivor of a serial killer. And because of that experience that she has, she is recruited by the FBI to interview teen killers. And she does these interviews with another FBI teen recruit. And as they're interviewing these teen killers, they actually find themselves in the middle of an active serial killer case. This book reminds me of Silence of the Lambs, but with teenagers. It's thrilling, it's kind of dark to be honest, and definitely keeps you on your toes. The next book, similar vibes, but a completed series, but it's the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is straight up teenage Criminal Minds. I love it so much. I'm a big fan of Criminal Minds. The book follows Cassie, and she's recruited into this FBI program that is consistent of teens with natural abilities to help solve cold cases. For example, Cassie's natural ability is she's really good at reading people. But this book in the series, it has found family, it has a love triangle, which was oddly really well done. And of course, Criminal Minds, solving cases. It's so much fun. A little bit dark, but still fun. The next category is more adult mystery thrillers. The first book is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Check your trigger warnings on this book. It's very dark, it's very gritty. It follows Camille, and she is returning to her hometown to investigate a crime that has occurred there. And for years, she's avoided her hometown because of her family and all of their problems. But like I said, it's dark, it's gritty, it's gonna make you feel uncomfortable. It's definitely a thriller and has a twisty ending. The next book is The Silent Patient, another book that has a darker tone. Alicia's life is perfect, or seemingly so. She's married, she lives in a big house. However, of course, not everything is as it seems, because one day she gets up and she shoots her husband and then never talks ever again. This book is in the perspective of her psychotherapist, who is trying to uncover why that is. But I love this book. I thought it was so well done and, of course, twisty. The next category is just general fiction because they didn't really fit into the other categories that well. The first book being If We Were Villains. This is the essence of dark academia, and it's very heavy on Shakespeare. But this book follows Oliver. Oliver is just released from prison for a murder he may or may have not committed. Who knows? But after his release, the detective on the case essentially informally interviews him to figure out what actually happened. But like I said, it's dark academia. It takes place at a college, a Shakespeare drama program with pretentious students. Even if you are not a big fan of Shakespeare or haven't read a lot of Shakespeare, I feel like you'll still really enjoy the book. Granted, you probably will have to look up some things while you're reading the book just to make sure you understand what's going on, but I feel like that shouldn't deter you away from the story and just the knowledge of the world and the story itself. Next book is Aileen. This is not going to be a book for everyone. This book occurs over the course of the week, and eventually it discusses the events that lead up to Aileen leaving her hometown and never returning. This book is creepy, it's gross. Nothing's really likable about the characters, and the New England cold setting definitely adds to that factor. Like I said, it's not going to be for everyone. You're not going to really like any of the characters, but it will definitely make you feel emotions. Not always good emotions. The final book in this category is Circe. This is a Greek mythology retelling. Follows Circe, and you may know Circe from the Odyssey, but she's really overshadowed by all the other characters in that story, whereas this take is all about Circe. But if you love Greek mythology, if you love retellings, if you love beautiful writing and storytelling, and just books about characters that have been overshadowed in the past and really given their moment to shine, I feel like you will love Circe. And finally, the last category, which is classics. I personally love a lot of classics. I definitely have a personal and specific taste of classics, which you're about to find out from all my recommendations. The first one being Wuthering Heights. It's a gothic tale told through a flawed narrative structure about flawed people. And that's the best way I can describe this book. Primarily, it is about Heathcliff and Catherine as they are growing up into adulthood and eventually follows their rather unfortunate demise. But I see this book less as a love story and more of a cautionary tale about death, revenge, and generational trauma, which through that perspective, I really enjoyed this book. The next book is another gothic tale, but it's Jane Eyre, one of my favorite classics. It's about Jane. She's an orphan. She grew up in a cruel and lonely world, and as an adult she gets a job as a governess, where she finds out everything is not as it seems. But this book is truly about Jane, her character, her development, her internal struggles with independence and conformity. Yes, it's a love story in some sense. It does have some romance, but I feel like the book is so much more than that. Next book, which, surprise, surprise, it's another gothic tale. This is Rebecca. This book is about a nameless character. She marries a wealthier, widowed man, and when they return back to his estate, she finds out that his late wife, Rebecca, may have truly never left. This book is truly perfect. I love the setting, I love the description, the prose, such beautiful writing. Mystery has a little bit of paranormal elements. It's so good. Truly a book about a woman coming into her own. The next book is We Have Always Lived in the Castle. This is a little bit more spookier. It is another gothic book, surprise, but it's about two sisters who live in this big house on the outskirts of the village, and you come to find out that the village has ostracized the entire family because they believe one of the sisters killed their family. This book, it's tragic, it's strange, it's weird, yet whimsical and magical all at the same time. Also, it's really short, so if you want a short book to read, pick this one up. The last book on this list, and the last book that I'm going to talk about, is The Picture of Dorian Gray. Who would have thought another gothic book? This is a tragic tale about a man who sells his soul in order to be beautiful forever. As Dorian retains his youth, the picture an artist painted for him continues to decay. It's gothic, it's haunting, it's beautiful, and you learn how beauty really is finite. But if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I know it was a really long list. Hopefully you found a book that you want to read from this list. If you want to follow me on elsewhere, I'm also on TikTok, I'm also on Instagram. It's the same account name, Maddie Reads 6. But without further ado, I'll see you next time.